Welcome to Project Destination Clark. My name is Nicole Zervos, and I am Associate Director of Admissions here at Clark, and I'll be moderating this evening's webinar. So for this session, we're calling it a session for parents and families. Our panelists are looking forward to answering all of your questions. We're going to provide some resources for you as you support your students through this process and hopefully become a Clarkie parent. This is more of a Q&A style webinar, so feel free to ask us anything that's still on your mind at this point. So before we officially get everyone to introduce themselves though, I want to run through a couple of tips for using the technology. First, you'll notice that either on the bottom of your screen or at the top of your screen, depending if you're using a Mac or a PC, we have both a Q&A feature and a chat feature. If you're having any issues with the technology we're using today, if you can't see or hear us for some reason, please use the chat feature. If you'd like to ask a question of one of our panelists, please use the Q&A feature. So after you submit a question, you might not necessarily see it right away. In order to ensure that we can get to as many questions as possible, we have an admissions staff member behind the scenes managing your questions and queuing them up one at a time. We're going to try and answer as many questions as we can on air, but we will also answer some over text. There's a lot of people tuning in right now, so I apologize in advance if we don't make it to all of the questions, but we will follow up with everyone who submits a question on the webinar, and you're also welcome to email us after the event at admissions@clarku.edu. Okay, so let's get started. I'm joined tonight by 4 panelists. Could each of you take a minute to tell us a little bit about yourselves and your role at Clark? We can go by the order that you appear on the screen. So Anvi, could you start us off?
Yeah, of course. So hi, everyone. My name is Anvi. I am a senior here at Clark University. I'm studying biochemistry and molecular biology, specifically on the pre-med track. Outside of the classes that I take for my major, I'm also involved in a research group here on campus studying medicinal organic chemistry. And I also did 2 years of medical scribing at our local hospital, where my primary role was to do all of the documentation for our physicians in the emergency department.
Hi everyone, my name is Jen Plant. I'm Assistant Dean and Director of the Writing Center and Writing Program. I've also taught courses at Clark University, including a first-year intensive, and I can address questions about academic advising, academic policy questions, any questions you have about academic resources that are available to students. So welcome tonight.
Oh, I just unmuted myself. Hi, everyone. I'm Professor Rosalie Torres-Stone. I'm an associate professor in the sociology department. I've been at Clark for about 6 years, and prior to Clark, I was at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln in the Lincoln sociology department. And then I also spent about 7 years at the medical school in the psychiatry department doing research, primarily on young adults and mental health. And so the courses I teach at Clark now focus on community and health. I teach a course on nonprofit grant making and grant writing, and I also focus on the social determinants of health.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Adam Hughes. I'm the Senior Associate Dean of Students and one of the university's Deputy Title IX coordinators. Thanks so much for joining us tonight. A very different environment for all of us to be working in. Thinking and pretending that that is unacknowledged is sometimes often a mistake for us, but we're here with you in the best format and fashion that we can be. I'm broadcasting live from a basement right now, just to make sure that we can connect and talk with you about all the resources that we can provide for you when we do start this upcoming semester in your student career here at Clark. I specifically work in the very non-academic realms of supporting students. So I personally oversee residential life and housing, student leadership and programming, and a position we call the Director of Student Support Management. So we're overseeing ways to support your students through their fundamental holistic experience here on the campus.
Great, thank you all for introducing yourselves and telling us a little bit more about you. So I'm going to share some brief information about some resources for parents and families, but feel free to keep submitting your questions through the Q&A. So if your student does decide to attend Clark, we want you to know that you will also become a part of the Clark family. Clark is a place that has an incredible sense of community. We have a number of ways that you can get involved and stay connected to other Clark parents and to family members. So first off, we do have an active parents association, which you will be able to join as a Clark parent. We also have a family weekend that takes place in the fall. Last year it was in early October, and that's a great weekend to kind of help kick off the academic year. There are a number of special events for parents and families, opportunities to tour the Main South neighborhood, athletic games, and plenty of opportunities to familiarize yourself with campus, with faculty, and the city of Worcester. If you aren't able to get to campus, or if you would prefer to connect over social media, we do have a Clark University Families Facebook group. That's a great way to stay connected to other parents and families and hear about what's going on at Clark. And finally, there is a dedicated part of the Clark website specifically for parents and families, where you can find a variety of information about things like financial aid, campus life, academics, internships, the ways you can connect with other parents, Worcester. All this information is available online in other places, but that is a dedicated website where you can kind of go to one spot, which is kind of nice. You don't have to go hunting for the information that you might be looking for. So I would definitely check that out if you have some questions or you're looking for specific resources. Before we get into audience questions, I do want to take a moment to kind of address the current situation that we're in. Like Adam said, we're all in this right now, kind of going through this global pandemic, and I anticipate that there will be a lot of questions about this tonight. So I just kind of wanted to address what's happening and what Clark is planning to do should this pandemic continue into the fall, and whether we're going to move classes online. So Clark, like many other institutions, is planning with greater and greater specificity as more information from the CDC and other public health officials becomes available. Right now, it's simply too early to say for sure what will happen in the fall or what the fall will bring. However, you should know that right now, we're not considering bringing the undergraduate curriculum online for an entire semester or more. We think the more likely scenario is that we would be pushing back the fall start date into September or October, depending on what happens, should that be necessary based on the recommendations we receive from public health officials. So we know you're all following the news. As you can tell, the situation and the prognosis for the virus is very fluid, but that's what we're sort of imagining at this time. And I think whether there's a pandemic or not, Clark has always been and continues to be a very student-centered institution. We're working really hard to put the needs of our students first. So if you do have further questions about this, please feel free to email the admissions email, admissions@clarku.edu, or feel free to reach out to your specific admissions counselor. My colleague behind the scenes will put a link into the chat where you can find your the Meet the Counselor page. So if you don't already know who your admission counselor is, you can identify who that may be. All right, so let's move into some of our Q&A questions. So one question we have is about the process of orientation. So can you explain the arrival orientation, timing for move-in day, parent sessions, parent departure timing, etc. So maybe, Anvi, if you want to start maybe talking about your experience with the orientation, and then maybe Adam can jump in as well.
Yeah, so my experience was a tiny bit different because I got to participate in a pre-orientation program called ACE that was meant for first generation students as well as minority students on campus. So I got to move into campus 2.5 weeks early and take classes on campus with a group of about 25 other students. And we did a lot of workshops, took an English class, a math class, and did some fun trips together. So that was kind of what everything looked like beforehand. And then for actual orientation, it's about 4 days, I believe, before the start of classes, where the first day you come in, you move in, you start to meet your peer advisors, and you kind of break off into groups. You have a chance to kind of say goodbye to your families, and they go off to do different workshops and learn about other things that are going on campus while you're trying to get acclimated and meet other students that are in your peer advising group. And from there, it's a lot of icebreakers. I will repeat, a lot of icebreakers so that you really get to know all of these other students that are going to be in your class. And it's really fun. You spend most of your time outside playing games. There are a couple of movies to go to at night. There are some fun events where you are, one of my favorite ones was actually they set up the green so that there was like a light up soccer ball. Everybody was playing soccer together while there are a couple of food trucks around. You can go get free food while you're just meeting new students, which is really fun. Yeah.
Yeah, so I would say I will highlight a skill of Clark's faculty and administration in the answer to this question. And I would say our students and our student leaders as well. I've been in a lot of schools prior to my start here at Clark 6 years ago. I was at MIT and BU for about 7 years. And what I'll say is we pivot and adapt better than almost any institution I've ever seen or been at. So we will have an answer ready for you on May 4th when we open our welcome website that could very easily do a complete 180-degree change on June 4th, and we will be ready to communicate that change to you and sort of cradle and accept that change with you, right? It's not going to be one of those harsh lines that makes us say, your whole experience is different, and if you don't like that, tough. That's just not how we treat things and not how we're going to treat you. So my brief answer is we generally open the Thursday before the first day of classes, which is scheduled here at Clark to be the 24th of August, Monday, the 24th of August this year, which like puts us at a super COVID disadvantage, right? We're already trying to start earlier than most. And, you know, moving occurs, we start, as Anvi referenced, a bunch of sessions with both faculty, staff, and students that lead them to educate folks on the campus, on the experience of being a student here, the resources available, and the things that are necessary. I can tell you, I mean, before this, I was in a meeting planning the several versions of orientation, right, that we might be preparing for. And we're always trying to be thoughtful of what your experience is. As an example, one of the things we don't typically have to do at orientation is tour the campus multiple times. But we know that most of you will never have had a chance to set foot on the campus with your students because of this pandemic, and we're going to build that into whatever orientation we have, right? Because we know that that's something that we can't take for granted anymore. So while I can't really truly outline exactly what it's going to look like for fall 2020, what I will tell you is all of the content will either be included in that orientation or in virtual events that we plan for you for prior to arrival, or in the fall academic term, where we will build it into other modules of events and classes that we have, and that when changes happen, we will communicate them to you as quickly and fluidly as possible so that you're on par and on page with the communications that our students and our faculty and our staff have as well, right? You're in the family now, so you're part of the Clarkie community, and we're going to make sure that you get that information with as much grace as we can possibly deliver.
Great, thank you both for those answers. This next question I'm going to direct to Jen. So the question is, how do students access the Writing Center and other academic support? And is there a lot available?
So the Writing Center, we actually have an online schedule, so students can access us online. I'll try to get the link in the chat as soon as I'm done talking, but I can't do two things at once, unfortunately. But it's super easy for them to access our online schedule, and that's where they make appointments. And they can also change their appointments and things like that. It's super easy. That said, we are a small operation. I have 7 to 8 consultants, writing consultants, who are Clark graduate students or Clark undergraduate students. I have a mix of both. So 7 to 8 of them on any given academic year. And we see approximately 800 appointments per semester. So we're super busy. So as far as how easy is it to get in, if a student is mindful of the fact that they should probably book an appointment 2 days in advance of when they want to come in, they'll get an appointment. But if they want to make a same day appointment, that's less likely to happen because we are so busy. Other academic resources operate a little bit differently. There are some academic resources. We have something called the Quantitative Skills Center. Students can just pop in when a tutor is available and get help with calculus or statistics. Then there are professor office hours and TA office hours. There are a ton of academic supports for students at Clark. So a student would really have to try to avoid any kind of academic support because there are just so many offered here. I hope that answers the question.
Thank you. So the next question is a two-part question. So I'll start off maybe with Anvi answering the first part, and then maybe Jen or Rosalie answering the second part. So the first part is, when do freshmen choose their classes? And is there an advisor who works with them? So Anvi, do you want to talk about the process of choosing your classes as a first year? And then maybe Jen or Rosalie could talk about the advising piece.
Of course. I don't remember the exact date off the top of my head, but sometime over the summer, I believe June-ish, you basically are emailed and said that get an email that says, hi, we're going to start registration soon. Here is your assigned summer advisor, as well as set up a time to actually register for your courses. So when it's time, whatever time you select, your advisor will either call you or Skype in with you to discuss what you want to study, what classes you're interested in taking, and basically work out your kind of semester schedule with you and give you advice on what kind of course loads you can balance together, how to kind of challenge yourself, as well as exploring other possibilities so that you can kind of make the best of your first year. And that's really how it works. It's really nice because basically they kind of just chat with you. It's super chill, low key. It's not anything that's super high stressful. It's really just more of a conversation so that they can get an idea of who you are and what you're interested in.
Yeah, and my experience, I also am a parent. I'm a Clarkie parent as well. And so I've had two students who are still at Clark who, my first year student, she got assigned an advisor. And so usually some faculty will choose to be advisors over the summer. And so they're assigned to the first year students. Those aren't the advisors that they usually stay with, but they're just somebody that kind of gets them going with their selection. But after that, one of the things that I know, even when I advise my own students, is that it's staggered. And so you have seniors and juniors and sophomores, there's different dates when they can register for their classes. And so students, particularly first year I've seen, you really have to pay attention to when that happens, because if you don't get up in the morning and you don't sign up for those courses, then you might miss an opportunity to get into that class because some of them are so popular. And so, but after that, once they've picked their advisor, we even just to release their PIN to register for their courses, I meet with all my advisees and make sure that they're on track and that they have the right courses before I release their PIN to sign up for their courses.
And prior to a student meeting with their advisor over the summer, an incoming student meeting with their advisor over the summer, students have access to resources on their welcome page that introduce them to academic life at Clark. Broad brush strokes about, what is the program of liberal studies all about? How do you read what we call the course grid, which is just basically our listing of courses. And students review those materials prior to meeting with their advisor so that they have a pretty good idea of what they have to do, or what they, how they should proceed in their conversation with their summer advisor as well. So it's a really smooth process. Summer advising is a really smooth process.
I also, along with Jen just said, I wanted to add that also it might be a good idea to also look at the academic catalog and look at the programs of study, because some of this, I think it's pretty common, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's pretty common for students not to only have a major, but they might have a minor or also have a concentration. And there's so many different concentrations that students might be interested in, particularly if they're on the health track. They might want to do health science and society. So just trying to get a look at who the faculty are in each of those and just connect with them, maybe even early on.
Great, thank you. So we have a couple questions about academic and emotional supports and supports for students with mental health. So maybe Adam, could you be able to talk about what sort of emotional support systems are available for students?
Sure, yeah. We have a pretty robust counseling center. That staff is relatively deep because we also employ several of our local PhD students who are not Clark students, but they are needing their practicum hours practicing, as well as a fully staffed department of professionals employed by Clark. That staff sees appointments throughout the normal work day, your sort of typical 9 to 5. And then we've supplemented that with a couple of different programs that help support students. One is a teletherapy program where if students call after hours or on the weekends, they can use the voicemail prompts at the counseling center to land on a short appointment with a licensed therapist. We do get a log of that, especially if it's students we're working with, so that we understand that there might have been an incident that the student wants to talk about. But it's really been a great preventative measure from what has historically been either hospital or nothing response to the medical world of students in mental health crisis. This has helped us sort of gear that down to being able to crisis prevent in certain moments and then develop a plan with students for the upcoming day. And then the second program we have beyond our counseling center, so 3 total, is a consortium of folks in the area who are private practice therapists, but don't have a physical location to practice in. And they are now renting space in the counseling center from us after hours and on the weekends, because it helps them get onto insurance platforms and things of that nature, but they don't physically have a place to do their licensed practicing. So they are just like any other therapist that you would go to see in a rented office in either a strip mall or a physical medical building or even a triple decker here in Massachusetts. They're renting that space from us so that we can allow easy access for students, but it also keeps some sense of separation from Clark University, right? If you want to see your therapist outside of your educational experience, you can do that and still not have to leave campus. You just have to set up an appointment either after 5 o'clock or on the weekends. So those are 3 layers that we're using. And then we always have professional staff that are on call in case things happen for the student experience, either at night or after hours or on the weekends. You've always got an RA to a professional staff member in Res Life, to a dean on call, to a counselor on call, and then University Police is available 24/7. So we've got several layers available. And the most important part of that is we will certainly help develop after incident care with students. That is sort of like me giving you the big, like, oh my God, something happened right now answer. But there is, as I said, general therapy available, and then work with administrators and staff members who are just sort of here to resource and help.
I just wanted to add the other piece too. As Adam mentioned, there's so many resources, but as a faculty member, I can also fill out a care report. And so if I'm concerned about a student who maybe I haven't seen in a week, usually if I haven't seen them in a week, I usually email them. But if I haven't seen them in a week or a couple weeks, or I feel like they're struggling, I just fill out the care report, and the team they figure out how to get in touch with that student as well.
That's great, thank you. So next questions, we have a couple questions about roommate selection. So maybe Anvi, could you answer when do you typically find out about roommate? How does roommate selection work? Things like that.
Yeah, I think, so there's a couple ways that students decide who they want to room with. The survey, I believe, goes out sometime in April and is due by June. And basically what it is you can either opt to fill out the random survey, as they call it, where you answer questions like, oh, I like to go to bed early, I like to sleep with the lights on, I like to listen to live music when I study, questions like that, just to get a basis for how you live, so that our Res Life and Housing can hand pair you with a roommate, and that's considered random. A cool thing about that is at the end of that survey, there's a space where you can basically write as much as you want about anything you want the reader to know about you, so that they can hand match you as well as they can. Other students decide they want to kind of pick their own roommate, in the sense of, I know somebody that's from my town that is also going to Clark and I want to room with them. You can request a roommate that way. Some students meet on the Facebook page and kind of connect through that and decide that they want a room and request that roommate as well. So you can either do a random survey or request a specific roommate.
Great, thank you. Another question is, do a lot of Clarkies work while they're undergraduates? What type of jobs are available both on and off campus?
I can talk a little bit about that. So I would say, I don't know the actual percentage of students that are working, but I would say most of the students do. I think something like 90% of our students are involved in some type of internship while they're at Clark. But a cool thing is that I think Clarkies are really passionate about what they're doing and they want to get involved in the community, whether that's an internship or whether that's volunteering or just pursuing what they want. Basically, I take a full course load. I was able to balance about 30 to 40 hours of work a week. I wouldn't recommend it, but I was able to balance that as well as doing research. And I think I was always wanting to do more, and it got to the point where my professors were like, you need to stop saying yes to people and kind of think about yourself. But it is something that students do take advantage of. One of the really cool things is there's a couple resources that we have, one of them being Handshake, which is basically a platform kind of like LinkedIn, but basically there's job listings, whether they're on campus or off campus, and our career services department will help you write resumes, cover letters, and things like that so you can apply for these jobs. Additionally, we also have Clark Connect, which is, I think it's amazing. It is basically a platform for current Clark students and alumni to connect, whether that's to get opportunities to shadow jobs, to get internship opportunities, research opportunities, job opportunities, whether you're still a student at Clark or you've graduated and are looking for a job. And it's really nice to kind of build that relationship with alumni, because them being alumni, they understand what your work ethic is as a Clark student, and they're going to trust your abilities, and they're more likely, I would say, to hire you or give you opportunities to shadow them, things like that.
Great, thank you. So another question, maybe Adam, could you answer this one? This is, do students have healthcare services on campus?
Yeah, we have a health center with a nurse and a nurse practitioner. We contract with the UMass Medical Center. So students can visit that office, and we do have a physician that does office hours once a week. And secondary to that, which is sort of part of the first question around mental health, we have a psychiatrist who does weekly sessions with our counseling center for students to maintain medications or new prescriptions as needed. But it's a solid center. Robin, our nurse practitioner, has been with us for a long time. She knows Clark very, very well.
Great, thank you. Anvi, this question is for you. Can you talk a little bit about how you decided on Clark, and what do you see are the strengths of the campus?
Definitely. I love this question. So I initially didn't know that I wanted to go to Clark. I knew coming into college that I wanted to study biochemistry, that I wanted to be on the pre-med track, I guess you would say. And so I reached out to all of the pre-med advisors at the various schools that I was applying to. And Dr. Thurlow, who is our old pre-med advisor, basically was the first one to get back to me and immediately invited me in to meet with him, and was like, hey, let's just chit chat. I want to get to know you. And so I came in and sat down with him. He's like, he told me we were going to chit chat. It turned into what I call a mini interrogation. And he started grilling me about why I wanted to be pre-med, why I wanted to be a doctor, if I understood the kind of commitment that I was getting myself into, if I really understood what was going on. And after all of that, he was kind of like, okay, so there are some things that you need to think about still, but you seem dedicated and you want to learn, and that's what I like. And so basically he planned out every single class I would need to take in my 4 years at Clark in order to graduate on time with my biochemistry degree, as well as fulfill all of my prerequisites for medical school on time, so that if I wanted to, I could be applying to medical school during my senior year and attending medical school right after, or I could also make time for other things as well. So we kind of set up everything. And for me, having a professor show that much interest in my own success, even though I hadn't even committed to the school yet, and was still preparing me to succeed regardless of what school I chose, really stood out to me. And I think that really continued throughout my Clark experience. The professors here are absolutely amazing and genuinely just want to see you succeed regardless of it, whether it's in their department or something else. If you are, like, I had a couple friends who wanted to study political science and kept like really struggling because like she enjoyed it but wanted to do something else. And every time she sat down with her political science advisor, they'd be like, you know, I know you say you want to do political science, but it seems like you're leaning more towards psychology. Like, have you explored that a little bit? And they're like, no, I want to do poli-sci. But after all of these conversations, it kind of turned out that she really wanted to do psychology. And so he kind of pushed her in that direction, which was cool because he's like, I know I want you to succeed regardless of whether it's in my department or not. And I think all of the professors here really kind of just want to hang out with their students sometimes and catch up and see how you're doing. It's not a matter of just like, hi, you need to do well in my class, and that's the end of that. They really want to see you find your passion and continue on with that.
That's great. That's also sort of leads into the next question, whether maybe you or maybe Rosalie or Jen might want to answer this one too. So what supports are available for students who are undecided about a major?
I'll start. Rosalie, feel free to jump in. That's a great question. So there are a bunch of different supports, frankly. Students can go to academic advising and meet with either the director of academic advising or the assistant director and have a conversation about interests and what courses they liked in high school and what courses they're finding interesting at Clark. In these conversations, frankly, students can come to me and have these conversations too. There are a number of folks within the LEAP Student Support Network that students can speak with, and we are all trained to have these holistic conversations with students, asking them generative questions to get them thinking about possible majors. We also encourage them. Anvi mentioned Handshake earlier. There are a number of resources on Handshake that allow students to sort of take little mini tests to mine their interests. There are resources about like, what can I do with this major? Students can talk to, again, Anvi sort of mentioned the alumni connection. Students, we have this thing called Clark Connect, where students can connect with Clark alums who are more than happy to talk with students about careers and things like that. Students also talk to other students. And, if I have a student come to my office and ask me questions about, I don't really know what I want to do, I have a lot of interests, or I don't really know what I want to do, I, only have a few interests. I will have a conversation with that student, but then encourage them to go out and speak with upperclassmen who may have had similar journeys. And that peer-to-peer kind of discussion really helps students as well. So there are a number of resources. Rosalie, what did I miss?
So from a faculty standpoint, I usually, I feel like sometimes the intro classes that they might take, so like some of my students that have gone into sociology, took an intro to sociology, and maybe never had taken sociology before and found it really interesting and thought that they would pursue it. So then they have a conversation with me about that. But I think one of the things that students often will do will say, they'll go in and they'll look up sociology jobs or something like that. And I'll be like, no, you don't want to Google sociology jobs. And so we start having this conversation about what is it that you'd want to do? And they go, well, I really don't know. I said, well, what populations would you want to work with? And so then they tell me, well, I really like kids, or I really want to work with underserved populations. And then we start going backwards a little bit about, all right, well, what about these nonprofits? What about doing an internship? One of the things that Clark has is problems of practice courses. And so we call them those POP courses. And so these courses, sometimes the students get more experience in the community outside of the class. And so I teach a class on community and health nonprofit grant writing. And so I had a student who was a sociology major who minored in theater, but I could tell her heart was in theater. And so I kept wanting to figure out, like, how are you going to, meld this into your life? And so she ended up taking this class, and now she's writing grants for this theater repertoire now in Rhode Island. And so she figured out a way to meld both those worlds. And so, and I also have students that are in psychology, and then they want to come to sociology, and I go, well, wait a minute, like, let's think about this. And so I don't try to steal psychology students into sociology, but we have those conversations, and we make sure that we have that, we have just kind of like, we just keep talking about it until we kind of figure it out. So.
Thank you. Avi, could you maybe talk about student safety on campus, in and around campus and Worcester?
Definitely. I think I am a little biased because I did grow up in Worcester my entire life, and so I feel very comfortable living in Worcester, but I think Clark does make a great effort to make sure that everybody feels that way and not just students who are used to living in the area. Clark University Police is a great part of our campus and our family here. They are available 24/7, and they're actually on the bottom floor of one of the first-year residence halls. So they're always around. They're always kind of like patrolling around. I am a commuter student, so it was really nice to see that like pretty much every night there is a police car sitting somewhere in the garage to make sure that students walking to their cars at night are feeling safe. We also have Clark Safety Escort, which is basically, I call it a fleet of minivans that's driven by students on campus, and they will basically take you anywhere within a quarter-mile radius of Clark University for free from 4 p.m. to 4 a.m. every day of the week. And I know a quarter mile doesn't really sound like a lot, but it reaches, I believe, at least 4 grocery stores, 2 pharmacies, and more restaurants than I can count. So basically anything that you would ever need from 4 p.m. to 4 a.m. is accessible by Safety Escort. And if for some reason those vans aren't running because something like the weather, university police will take over and help shuttle students around. But I think always keep in mind that Worcester itself is a city, and you should always follow the rules of never walking by yourself and always walking with a buddy, especially late at night. But I would say Worcester has somewhat of a homey feel to it. We do live in like a residential neighborhood. One of my favorite things is every morning when I drive into school, the students, the little kids are getting onto the school bus. There's a playground right outside of Clark, and the little kids are always playing over there. So it makes it feel like really homey. Yeah.
May I jump in as well, real quick? So I too live in the neighborhood. I've lived in the neighborhood for about 12 years, and I love it. I know that there are a handful of Clark faculty and staff who live in the neighborhood, and I've said this before, and I've actually said it, and it's quoted in newspapers, so I'm not lying to you for this event tonight. Maine South feels like a small town in a big city. You know, I usually walk to work, and if there are some days that I don't, the next day that I walk, somebody in a restaurant that I walk past will be like, I didn't see you yesterday, are you okay? So it's very much, to me, it's got that small town feel within a big city.
That's great. So we're running a little short on time, but I do want to ask one last question of all the panelists. Could you tell us, what do you love about Clark the most? What's your favorite thing about Clark?
Oh, I love this question too. I think I'm unmuted, yeah. So what I like is the smaller community that we have. But it doesn't feel small. I mean, to me, it doesn't feel small, but I'm able to engage with my students. My classes are usually around, I think the largest class I've had is that intro class. That's about 35 students. But usually my classes are about 18 or 16 students. And I'm not even making this up. I don't know if it's just me, but my students have my cell phone number more now than they did before. Now they all have my cell phone number, but they call me, they text me. I went to the grocery store the other day when I escaped from this shutdown here. I escaped and went to the grocery store, and I spoke to one of my students for about a half hour in my car. Just that she's talking about nothing. I'm like, Em, I hope you don't mind that she's like, no, I just felt like talking to somebody outside of this household. And so it really is like that. And so what I really like about Clark is that connection with the students. And faculty and staff, we're all really good about just communicating with each other around students as well.
Yeah, I'll second that. I love Clark students, and I love Clark faculty and staff. I feel very fortunate that I get to work with the students I get to work with, and the faculty and staff that I get to work with. The students inspire me.
I think my favorite thing is just the collaborative nature of our student body. I came in a little anxious about being a pre-med student and competing with everybody else who was pre-med to get into the best medical schools or outcompete everybody, and that's just not how it is. I think I learn best from teaching others and having others teach me, and being able to experience that with my peers is great. Like, I've never turned away somebody who's asked me a question or asked for help, and the same has never happened to me. Like, my friends are always willing to help me, and we all want to help and see each other succeed and not tear each other down. So it makes everything a little bit less stressful, and it's nicer to kind of hang out and study with friends rather than like hiding yourself in a corner and not letting anybody else study with you kind of thing. And so just being able to have that kind of support system from both my peers and faculty is amazing.
Thank you. And I'll give my perspective last. I would echo everything that everybody has said. Clark is an incredibly strong community, and I think that's something that is really important and I've really enjoyed about working at Clark. Another thing that I really enjoy, and I think Rosalie brought these up, is that I think Clark's a school that does a really great job of incorporating the real world experiences into the liberal arts curriculum. So I've worked at a number of different institutions and I haven't found a school like Clark that really does help students take what they're learning in the classroom and put it into those real life and real world experiences, whether it's through pop classes, through research, through internships, through off-campus jobs. I think I've been amazed at the types of opportunities that students have had and how passionate they are about what they do and what they study and how they're able to take that passion and translate it into a work opportunity or a research opportunity or something. So I've been really impressed with the opportunities that Clark students have and how they go about making those real life experiences work for them. So that's about all the time we have for today. I hope you found this webinar informative and got some of your questions answered. We do have more webinar events coming up. The next one is our Ask a Clerky, which is tomorrow at 8 p.m. So similar to this, we'll have students on hand to ask and get your questions answered. We also have a financial aid at Clark webinar coming up on Thursday. So our director of financial aid and one of our directors of admissions will be available to answer any questions that you may have about the financial aid process. And if you still have questions, feel free to email us at admissions@clarku.edu or send an email to your admissions counselor. Thank you all for tuning in. We really had a lot of fun answering your questions. We hope you'll be in touch if we can help with anything else. I hope everyone stays healthy and stays safe. Good night, everyone.